What's going on, guys? Fun with Knives back again, and my Spyderco kick continues. This time it's a pretty interesting model. This is the Caribbean, a knife that has interested me for quite some time, but definitely not one I need. This is from their Salt series. Their essentially rust-proof line of knives is not something I need. I'm not having knives rust on me all the time, and I just thought this would be a great larger EDC knife. It's got a compression lock, which we'll go over. We'll do a couple of size comparisons after we get through the specs here and just kind of talk about what I plan to do with this knife. Specs on this guy: 3.7-inch blade. Pretty long blade. I mean, not huge, but definitely a full-size pocket knife for me. Your cutting edge is just below that, 3.67 inches, with your blade thickness at 0.14, which is really similar, if not exactly the same, to a PM2. Yeah, I think that's about the same at their thickest point. Obviously, the star of the show here is that steel LC200N. Not a metallurgy expert, but from everything I've read and watched and heard about, it's pretty awesome steel. It's essentially rust proof like we talked about, but it has some decent qualities in the other areas like toughness, sharpenability, that kind of thing. So hopefully this performs just like a good EDC steel that happens not to rust. Full flat grind on that blade. Pretty abrasive looking kind of belt sand finish on that. And this is made in Taichung, Taiwan. Looks like a Sal Glesser design. I found, I think just about everyone else feels the same way here, Taiwanese Spydercos usually have really good fit and finish. This one seems to be the case, even though I just unboxed it. Everything seems to be functioning pretty well. You got a slight thumb wrap here, a little bit of jimping, not ultra aggressive, surprisingly. But the elephant in the room here are these handles. These are G10, obviously in a polarizing bumblebee kind of setup here for high visibility. I know if you drop this knife in just about anywhere, you're going to be able to find it again, which I understand, but it is kind of a point of contention for those who either like this knife or hate it. Hopefully they grow on me. If not, this might be a knife that I will dye, or at least try that dyeing technique of G10. But I was surprised to see that this G10 is not actually gritty or abrasive like a PM2 is slightly. This is just kind of ribbed, but they're smooth on top. So I'm sure this will provide some pretty good grip in hand. We'll have to see after some use, but hopefully that texture is kind of coming across. Handle shape seems very neutral with a decent little guard up front and kind of a opening here at the heel. I don't know what you want to call that, but something to lock your hand in both directions, which is good to see. There's a little sticker there I need to remove underneath the clip. One thing I heard, and I'm pretty sure is true anyway, is that the hardware, the liners, and the clip are also supposed to be just as corrosion resistant as the steel itself. So titanium clip here. This obviously looks a lot different than a standard steel Spyderco clip. And then you got coated hardware. I'm not actually sure if that's titanium hardware or just coated steel, but what I did hear is that these liners that are slightly milled out are made of LC200N as well. So those should not rust. But back to your specs here. Handle length, 4.84 inches. So with that 3.7-inch blade, we're sitting at right around 8.5 inches overall, with a weight of 4.2 ounces, which I think is absolutely manageable for this size of knife. And thickness, I don't have that offhand, but let's see how similar we are to a PM2 here. Very similar, maybe just slightly thicker. So overall, not a huge knife, but it's mainly this dimension. It's tall, it's wide, and I think that's why it feels good in the hand, but is also going to take up a lot of pocket real estate. This does come in two different blade versions. This is the leaf shape, obviously, and they have a sheep's foot as well. Sheep's foot probably makes more sense with this ethos, with being a a knife that you're going to take when you're in and around water, that if you're cutting webbing or netting or anything like that, especially when you're around someone else, you don't want to puncture something on accident, so you got more of a blunt tip. This I thought would be an excellent blade for EDC. Leaf-shaped blades always tend to be that. So just a couple of things to go over before we do some comparisons to some other Spyderco models that I think most people will be a little bit more familiar with if you haven't seen this knife. Is first thing, price. These are going for a really wide range of pricing right now. Spyderco even has them on sale directly from the factory, but all your knife manufacturers, outdoor stores, if they carry this model, are all over the place. I think the median price right now is probably around $225, $230. Don't know if that's worth it quite yet. I have no experience with this steel, but the build quality does seem good. But like all Spyderco's, pricing is going up and up and up, so I don't know if this warrants $40 more than a standard PM2, which is now like 180, but it's cool, unique knives, so we'll get into that more in the review in the coming weeks or months. And then one thing I'm noticing here is the clip is definitely not deep carry, so I'm glad I preemptively bought a Lynch Northwest deep carry clip. I went with the longer one, so hopefully that contact point with the scales lands right on that little flat pad where that sticker is that needs to be removed. So it'll function the same, but it'll be deep carry. But one troubling thing already is this detent is weak, like really weak. It's surprising. I mean, it's still decently smooth. You can flick it out. You can kind of roll it out. You know, obviously needs to be broken in for that smoothness to get even better, but the detent is almost like non-existent. And I think it might be stemming from partly this compression lock bar being made of that same steel feels different than some of these other compression locks that we'll go over. I don't know if there's less spring tension or the liner itself is thinner or something. Something just feels a little weird. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. The detent, I've been having a lot of misfires as I've been kind of making this video, so we'll see if that is a problem or if things open. Yeah, it kind of wants to come out if you just shake it, so we'll see what happens with that. And then also, I was kind of looking at this grind here. This secondary bevel gets a little wonky towards the end. I don't know if that's coming across on camera, right in this area. Still feels sharp, but looks like the angle changed a little. Not a huge gripe. I'm going to resharpen this at some point, hopefully correct it, which I doubt. My sharpening skills aren't fantastic, but usually Taiwanese Spydercos are pretty much spot on for fit and finish, so we'll see what happens with that. But here is your Caribbean, and if we're going to go to something similar, I think the Shaman's in that same class, at least for size. Certainly not, you know, rust resistance or intended use, I guess, but you have very similar sized handles here. A lot of usable grip area, obviously a forward finger choil on the Shaman, not on the Caribbean. So if you're really choking up on this knife, I mean, you're right next to the edge anyway, and a lot of usable cutting edge, much more than the Shaman. Similar story here with the Manix 2, lightweight. Yeah, I mean, this is probably a little bit more EDC friendly, although it is wide, just like the Caribbean. Most common comparison, I'm sure, is that PM2, a very dirty one at that. More blade length, you know, you don't have that choil, a little bit less of a thumb ramp here. But I think as far as sizing goes, these are very similar in this dimension. Blade stock thickness, I think your behind the edge thickness is going to be a little bit better here. Feels like a very slicey blade, very thin behind the edge with that tall, full flat grind. I think the PM2 is a little bit more robust in that area. They both have nice acute points, but both are standoffs, G10 construction, compression locks. And then if you wanted to see something a little bit more EDC friendly, just to give a real good idea of, this is actually a decently sized knife. Here is a native 5 lightweight that can fit in the profile of that Caribbean with ease. Same thing here with a pair of 3. Yeah, I mean, that thing just eats it up. So this might be just kind of a monster in the pocket, maybe not be able to fit a phone or something in there. We'll see. Oh, actually, we should probably look at this. This is the amalgam. These are actually far more similarly sized than I thought they would be. The amalgam's still a little bit longer. It's got a little bit less usable cutting edge though, just kind of with how that grind sets up on the amalgam. Give you a closer look here. So these are pretty similar knives, at least in size. Amalgam's just maybe a hair bigger. This one feels a little bit more hard used or capable. I don't know. We'll see. Got a review coming on that as well. But that is the Spyderco Caribbean. I'm excited for this one. I'm sure it's going to see a lot of EDC kind of food prep, cutting apples, and then of course boxes and all the normal EDC stuff. But I'll try to put it through some harder use, see how that compression lock lines up. It's got no blade play. Seems very sturdy. But yeah, that detent just being a little soft is kind of weird. It is fidgety, but if you misfire, that blade's not really kept in the handle well. Not great detention or retention. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and remember, have fun with your knives.